What if I told you that a single Bible verse could reveal the deepest secret Ellen DeGeneres has kept hidden for over 20 years? A secret so personal, so painful, that when Jonathan Roumie, the man who plays Jesus in The Chosen, spoke it out loud on live television, it left America's most beloved talk show host completely speechless for the first time in her career. This wasn't just another celebrity interview gone wrong. This was a divine encounter that shattered Ellen's carefully constructed walls in front of 4.2 million viewers, revealing a truth so shocking that even her own producers didn't know what to do. Picture this: Ellen DeGeneres, the woman who has made millions laugh through their darkest moments, sitting in stunned silence as tears stream down her face, unable to speak, unable to move, unable to process what just happened. The audience, expecting their usual dose of light-hearted entertainment, instead witnessed something that can only be described as miraculous. When Jonathan opened that worn leather Bible and read those specific words, something supernatural happened in that studio. Something that would change Ellen's life forever. "How could you possibly know that?" Ellen whispered, her voice breaking as she stared at Jonathan with a mixture of shock and wonder. "I've never told anyone that story. Not my wife, not my therapist, not even my own mother." The secret she had buried deeper than any scandal, deeper than any public controversy, had just been exposed not through gossip or investigation, but through a 2,000-year-old book that somehow knew her heart better than she knew it herself. What Jonathan revealed wasn't just Ellen's hidden pain. It was proof that God had been preparing this moment for decades, orchestrating every detail of their meeting, every word that would be spoken, every tear that would be shed. The Bible verse he shared didn't just apply to Ellen's situation. It was written specifically for her, as if the Apostle Paul himself had looked through time and seen this exact moment on this exact stage. But here's what will blow your mind. Jonathan had never met Ellen before. He knew nothing about her personal struggles, her private battles, or the devastating loss that had shaped her entire career. Yet somehow, through divine revelation that still gives me chills to think about, he spoke directly into the deepest wound of her soul with surgical precision that only God could provide. If you've ever wondered whether God still speaks to people today, whether he really knows your personal struggles, whether there's hope for the pain you've been carrying in secret, then you need to see what happened next. Drop a fire emoji in the comments if you believe God can reveal hidden truths, and smash that subscribe button because this story will shake your understanding of how intimately God knows each one of us. Trust me, what you're about to witness will restore your faith in divine encounters and prove that no secret is hidden from the God who loves you more than you could ever imagine. 2 hours before this life-changing encounter, Ellen DeGeneres was in her dressing room, reviewing what she thought would be the easiest interview of her career. "This should be fun," she told her producer, flipping through research notes about The Chosen and Jonathan Roumie's acting background. "Religious actors are always so grateful to be here. We'll talk about the show, maybe get some behind-the-scenes stories, and send everyone home feeling good about faith." She had no idea that in less than 3 hours, she would be questioning everything she thought she knew about God, spirituality, and her own carefully guarded heart. Ellen's team had done their usual thorough preparation, but their research focused entirely on Jonathan's professional life. They knew about his Lebanese heritage, his theater background, his method acting approach to playing Jesus. What they didn't know, what they couldn't possibly have discovered through any Google search or press kit, was that Jonathan had been having dreams about Ellen for the past 6 months. Dreams so vivid and specific that he had started a prayer journal dedicated entirely to her spiritual breakthrough. "I don't understand why I keep dreaming about Ellen DeGeneres," Jonathan had confided to his spiritual mentor just weeks before. "But God keeps showing me the same image. She's sitting in a chair, crying, and there's this overwhelming sense that she's been waiting her whole life for someone to see past her public persona and speak directly to her heart." His mentor had encouraged him to write down every detail, every impression, every word that came to him in prayer. That journal, now thick with entries, was tucked safely in Jonathan's jacket pocket as he prepared for what he believed would be a divine appointment disguised as a television interview. Ellen's confidence was legendary in Hollywood. She had interviewed presidents, movie stars, and world leaders with the same effortless charm that had made her America's sweetheart. But as she applied her final touch of makeup, something felt different about today. A strange nervousness she couldn't explain, a sense that this interview might matter more than the hundreds of others she had conducted. She dismissed the feeling, attributing it to the spiritual nature of Jonathan's work. After all, she had always maintained a respectful but distant relationship with organized religion, preferring her own private spiritual journey to any public declarations of faith. Meanwhile, Jonathan was in the green room, not reviewing talking points or preparing entertaining anecdotes, but praying with an intensity that surprised even him. "God, I don't know why you've brought me here today," he whispered, his hands clasped around the small wooden cross his grandmother had given him before she passed away. "But I trust that you have a purpose. If you want me to share something specific with Ellen, please make it clear. Help me love her the way you love her." As he prayed, the same vision that had been haunting his dreams for months became crystal clear. He saw Ellen's pain, her hidden loss, and most importantly, he saw the specific Bible verse that would unlock her heart. The Ellen Show's signature upbeat music began playing as the audience filed in, expecting their usual dose of celebrity gossip, games, and giveaways. They had come to be entertained, to escape their own problems for an hour, to bask in Ellen's infectious energy. None of them could have imagined they were about to witness one of the most profound spiritual encounters ever captured on television. The stage was set for what Ellen assumed would be another feel-good interview, but what God had orchestrated as a moment of divine revelation that would echo through eternity. As the final countdown began, Ellen felt that strange nervousness again, but pushed it aside with her professional instincts. After all, she had built her career on making people comfortable, on finding the light in every conversation, on keeping things positive and uplifting. She had no way of knowing that in just minutes, Jonathan would bypass every defense mechanism she had carefully constructed over decades and speak directly to the broken places in her heart that she thought were invisible to the world. "Please welcome the star of The Chosen, Jonathan Roumie," Ellen announced with her trademark enthusiasm as the audience erupted in applause. Jonathan walked onto the stage with a presence that immediately felt different from her usual guests. While most celebrities carried an air of performance or nervous energy, Jonathan moved with a quiet confidence that seemed to fill the studio with an unexplainable peace. Ellen noticed it immediately but brushed it off as the calm demeanor of someone who spent his days portraying the Son of God. The interview began exactly as Ellen's team had planned. Light conversation about the success of The Chosen, funny stories from the set, and the challenges of playing such an iconic figure. Jonathan answered each question thoughtfully, but Ellen couldn't shake the feeling that he was studying her more than she was interviewing him. His eyes held a depth that made her slightly uncomfortable, as if he was seeing something she didn't want revealed. "So tell me," Ellen said, steering toward safer territory, "what's it like walking in Jesus' footsteps every day? Do you feel the pressure of representing such an important figure?" Jonathan's response started normally enough, but then took an unexpected turn that would change everything. "Ellen, playing Jesus has taught me that God's love isn't just a concept we talk about on Sundays. It's a living, breathing reality that pursues us in our everyday moments, especially in our pain." His voice carried a weight that made the studio audience lean forward unconsciously. "I've learned that Jesus didn't come for the people who had it all figured out. He came for the brokenhearted, for those carrying secrets they think no one understands." Ellen's smile began to falter as Jonathan's words hit closer to home than any interview question ever had. "That's beautiful," she said, trying to regain control of the conversation, but her voice carried a slight tremor that attentive viewers would later replay obsessively. "I'm sure a lot of people find comfort in that message." She attempted to pivot to another light-hearted question about the show's popularity, but Jonathan gently interrupted her with words that would shatter her composure completely. "Ellen, can I share something with you that might sound unusual?" Jonathan asked, his voice so gentle it was almost a whisper. The studio grew remarkably quiet, as if even the cameras were holding their breath. "For the past 6 months, I've been having the same dream about you. In this dream, you're sitting in a chair much like the one you're in right now, and you're crying. But they're not tears of sadness. They're tears of relief, because someone finally sees the real you." The color drained from Ellen's face as Jonathan continued, his words carrying a supernatural precision that defied explanation. In this dream, there's a little girl who lost someone very important when she was young. Someone whose death shaped every decision she would make for the rest of her life. Someone she still talks to when she thinks no one is listening. Ellen's hands began to tremble visibly, and several audience members noticed her breathing becoming shallow and rapid. "I don't understand what you're talking about," Ellen said, but her voice cracked on every word. The defensive walls she had built over decades of public life were crumbling in real time, and millions of viewers could see it happening. Jonathan reached into his jacket and pulled out a worn leather journal, its pages filled with months of prayers and divine impressions. "Ellen, God has been trying to get your attention for years, but you've been so busy making everyone else happy that you've ignored the conversation he's been trying to have with you about your brother." The word brother hit Ellen like a physical blow, and she gasped audibly, her hand flying to her mouth as tears instantly filled her eyes. The audience sensed they were witnessing something unprecedented, something sacred and raw that transcended typical television entertainment. Jonathan's mention of her brother had unlocked a vault of pain that Ellen had kept sealed for over 25 years, pain that she thought was invisible to everyone, including God. "How could you possibly know about?" Ellen began, then stopped, unable to finish the sentence. Her brother's death when she was just 16 had been the defining tragedy of her life, the loss that drove her to comedy as a way to heal others' pain because she couldn't heal her own. She had never spoken about him publicly, never shared the guilt she carried, never revealed the desperate prayers she had whispered as a teenager begging God to bring him back. Jonathan opened his journal to a specific page, his own eyes filling with tears as he read what he had written months before ever meeting Ellen. "God showed me that you've been angry at him for taking someone away who was supposed to protect you. Someone who made you laugh before you ever made anyone else laugh. Someone whose absence created a hole in your heart that you've been trying to fill by bringing joy to millions of strangers." The specificity of his words was impossible to explain through research or lucky guessing. This was divine revelation happening in real time, and everyone in that studio knew they were witnessing something miraculous. If you're watching this and getting chills because you recognize your own hidden pain being described, drop a heart in the comments. God sees the losses you've never talked about too. Don't go anywhere, because what Jonathan reveals next will change how you understand God's love forever. The silence in the studio was deafening as Ellen stared at Jonathan through tears that she couldn't control. "My brother David," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "He was only 24. Car accident. I was supposed to be in that car with him that night, but I had a date instead." The words came out in fragments, as if speaking them aloud after 25 years was physically painful. For the first time in her career, America's most composed talk show host was completely undone on live television. "The guilt has been eating me alive," Ellen sobbed, her makeup running down her cheeks. "If I hadn't been so selfish, he would still be alive. My whole family fell apart after David died, and it's all my fault." The confession poured out like a dam bursting, releasing decades of self-condemnation that she had carried while making millions laugh. The audience sat in stunned silence, many crying along as they witnessed raw human pain being exposed. Jonathan reached across and gently placed his hand over Ellen's trembling fingers. "Ellen, the guilt you've been carrying isn't from God. It's from the enemy who wants to keep you trapped in what-if scenarios that were never your responsibility." His voice carried supernatural authority that transcended his role as an actor. "3 days ago, during prayer, I had the clearest vision I've ever experienced. I saw your brother in the most beautiful place, and he was proud of you. He was celebrating every person you've helped heal through laughter." "You're saying he's not angry with me?" Ellen whispered like a child seeking reassurance. "You're saying he doesn't blame me for living when he died?" The question carried 25 years of self-punishment, of success that felt hollow because it came at the cost of her brother's life. "Ellen, your brother's legacy isn't tragedy," Jonathan said with prophetic certainty. "It's every smile you've brought to a grieving mother's face, every moment of hope you've given to someone who felt forgotten. You've been answering his prayers your entire life without knowing it." As he spoke, the very atmosphere in the studio seemed to shift, as if heaven itself was bearing witness to this healing moment. But how can you possibly know this? Ellen asked, her journalist instincts fighting against her desperate need to believe. How can you be so certain about things that seem impossible? Her question voiced what millions of viewers were thinking, the tension between skepticism and the undeniable power of what they were witnessing. Jonathan smiled through his own tears, reaching for his worn Bible. Because the same God who loved David enough to receive him into paradise loves you enough to send you this message 25 years later. And he's about to prove it through a Bible verse that was written specifically for this moment, for your pain, for your healing. The anticipation in the studio was electric as everyone realized they were about to witness something that would change Ellen's life forever. Jonathan opened his worn Bible to a marked page, his hands trembling as he prepared to share what God had revealed. Ellen, what I'm about to read was written 2,000 years ago, but God showed me these words were meant specifically for you. The studio fell silent as Ellen leaned forward desperately. Romans 8 verse 28. And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him. Your brother's death wasn't God's plan, but he used that tragedy to birth a purpose in you that has touched millions. Ellen shook her head in confusion. How does my brother dying work out for good? How does losing him serve any purpose? Her voice carried decades of exhaustion from wrestling with these questions. Jonathan reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded, yellowed paper that made Ellen gasp audibly. Ellen, 3 nights ago I was praying for you when I fell asleep at my prayer desk. When I woke up, this was in my hand. This is a letter written in your brother David's handwriting, addressed to you, Jonathan said, his voice filled with wonder. The studio erupted in shocked murmurs as Ellen's face turned white, her hands reaching out then pulling back in fear. That's impossible, she breathed. David has been dead for 25 years. The handwriting was unmistakably her brother's, the same careful cursive from her childhood. Jonathan unfolded the miraculous letter with reverent care. Dear Ellen, he began reading, and immediately Ellen recognized not just the handwriting but David's voice. I know you've been carrying guilt about that night, but I need you to understand something heaven has taught me. God used my death to birth something beautiful in you that the world desperately needed. You think my life was cut short, but I've been watching you heal people the way you always healed me. The date you went on wasn't selfishness, Ellen. It was God protecting you because he had plans for your life. I'm not angry that you lived while I died. I'm grateful my little sister survived to become the light for millions who needed exactly what you had to give. As Jonathan read, the very air seemed charged with divine presence, even the camera operators wiping away tears. Stop punishing yourself for my choices, Jonathan continued reading. Start celebrating that my death gave birth to your purpose. You've spent 25 years trying to earn forgiveness for something that never needed forgiving. Now receive the love God has been pouring out through every life you've touched, every heart you've healed, every moment of joy you've created in my honor. Ellen stared at the letter, shaking uncontrollably. How is this possible? She whispered through tears. How could God give you something in my brother's handwriting? How could these words know exactly what my heart needed? Her questions voiced the miracle everyone was witnessing, the impossible intersection of heaven and earth happening in real time. If you're recognizing that God might be trying to heal your own impossible pain, comment, I believe, below. Don't miss Ellen's response to this miraculous letter. It will show you exactly how God wants to heal your broken heart too. For several minutes, Ellen sat in complete silence, staring at the letter that had shattered 25 years of guilt. Finally, she looked up at Jonathan with eyes that sparkled with something missing for decades. Peace. I can feel him, she whispered in wonder. For the first time since he died, I can actually feel David's presence, and he's not disappointed in me. The transformation was visible to everyone watching. The weight that had burdened Ellen for over 2 decades seemed to lift in real time. I've spent my entire adult life trying to be worthy of surviving when he didn't. But this letter is setting me free from a prison I built for myself. She wiped different tears now, tears of relief rather than grief. How do I process this? Ellen asked, her mind struggling with the supernatural encounter. Logically, this shouldn't be possible. But I can't deny what I'm feeling, and I can't explain away handwriting I would recognize anywhere. She traced the familiar loops of David's writing. "This is exactly what he would say to me if he could." Jonathan smiled through his tears, witnessing a soul being healed in real time. "Ellen, faith isn't about understanding everything logically. It's about trusting that love is more powerful than death. Your brother showed you that your entire life's work has been a prayer answered, a legacy fulfilled. I want to understand this God who would orchestrate something so impossible just to heal my broken heart," Ellen said suddenly. "Jonathan, will you help me learn about real faith?" Her request sent shockwaves through the studio and would later break the internet. The woman who built her career on safe, secular entertainment was openly asking to explore spiritual matters on live television. "It would be my honor," Jonathan replied, his smile radiant. "This is just the beginning, Ellen. What you've experienced today is God's invitation into a relationship that will transform every area of your life." Ellen nodded eagerly, decades of skepticism replaced by childlike wonder. The show ended with Ellen promising her audience she would document her spiritual journey. "If God can love me enough to send me a letter from my dead brother," she said with newfound conviction, "then maybe he's trying to reach you too. Maybe the pain you've been carrying has a purpose you haven't discovered yet." As cameras stopped rolling, Ellen clutched the letter to her chest like a lifeline. The crew stood in reverent silence, understanding they had captured something that transcended television, a supernatural healing that proved God's love could reach anyone, anywhere, even on a talk show stage. Within 24 hours of that miraculous encounter, the video of Ellen's transformation had been viewed over 50 million times across all platforms. But the real miracle wasn't the viral numbers, it was the flood of testimonies from viewers sharing their own supernatural healing experiences. Comments poured in from people who had lost siblings, parents, children, all saying they felt their loved one's presence while watching Ellen receive her brother's letter. One mother wrote, "I lost my son 2 years ago and blamed myself every day. Watching Ellen's healing gave me permission to forgive myself and believe my boy is proud of me too." Ellen kept her promise to document her spiritual journey, and what followed was unlike anything television had ever seen. She began ending every show with a simple prayer, not denominational or controversial, but honest conversations with God that millions of viewers joined. Her ratings didn't drop as network executives feared, they soared as people hungry for authentic spirituality found a safe place to explore faith. Ellen's vulnerability about her own spiritual discoveries created space for others to question, seek, and heal. The most powerful transformation came in Ellen's relationship with loss and grief. She started a segment called Love Letters from Heaven, where she would pray for audience members struggling with guilt over deceased loved ones, and time after time, supernatural revelations would come that brought healing to impossible pain. Skeptics called it psychological manipulation, but the changed lives were undeniable evidence that something beyond human explanation was happening through Ellen's surrendered heart. 6 months after that life-changing interview, Ellen made an announcement that shocked the entertainment world. She was partnering with Jonathan Roumie to create a show dedicated to exploring modern-day miracles and divine encounters. "I've discovered that God didn't stop speaking when the Bible was written," she told her audience. "He's still writing love letters to broken hearts today, and I want to help people recognize his voice in their own stories." But here's what moves me most about Ellen's transformation. She never forgot that her healing came through someone who saw her pain and prayed for her breakthrough. Ellen started praying specifically for other celebrities who seemed to be running from God, understanding that fame often masks the deepest spiritual hunger. She became what Jonathan had been for her, a bridge between heaven and hurting hearts that had given up on divine love. The ripple effects continue today. Ellen's openness about supernatural encounters has inspired countless others to share their own divine experiences without fear of ridicule. Churches across America report increased attendance from people who say Ellen's story gave them permission to believe that God might actually want a personal relationship with them. Her brother David's death, which had been a source of crushing guilt for 25 years, became the very foundation for a ministry of healing that continues to touch millions. As I reflect on this incredible story, I'm reminded that God's love doesn't follow our human logic or expectations. He can use a talk show, a dream, even a letter from heaven to reach hearts that have been running from him for decades. Ellen's healing proves that no pain is too deep, no guilt too heavy, no loss too devastating for God's redemptive love to transform into purpose. If Ellen's story resonates with your heart, if you recognize your own hidden pain in her journey, I want you to know that the same God who orchestrated that miraculous encounter is aware of your struggles too. Maybe you've been carrying guilt over a loss that wasn't your fault. Maybe you've been angry at God for taking someone you loved. Maybe you've convinced yourself that your pain disqualifies you from His love. Ellen's transformation declares that none of those barriers can stop God from reaching you with exactly the healing your heart needs. Drop "My heart is open" in the comments if you're ready to believe that God might have a supernatural encounter planned for your own healing. Share this video with someone who needs to know that their loved ones in heaven aren't disappointed in them. And hit that subscribe button because every week we're going to explore more stories of divine love breaking through impossible circumstances to heal the deepest wounds of the human heart. Your breakthrough might be one prayer, one moment, one miraculous revelation away. Don't give up on the God who has never given up on you.